Resident Evil 6 is a lot of things. It's the death of survival horror in the franchise, but also the catalyst for its rebirth. It's the climax of an era, a showcase of spectacle, yet also an experiment, a sampling of a vision that might have been. It's the first mainline entry to fall short of a positive critical reception. It killed Resident Evil in the eyes of very many. It's a maligned game, yet it's also one defended by a group that sees unique merits through the flaws. Time has passed, and the franchise has moved on from 6. Its new characters never appeared again, its new gameplay ideas never brought back, and the series took a massive leap away from it with its sequel, Resident Evil 7. Since then, RE has found itself in another golden age, with every new title flourishing in sales and critical praise. Despite RE6 initially being a sales disappointment, bizarrely enough, it ended up selling a phenomenal 14 million copies, being one of the highest sellers in the entire series. In retrospect, RE6 really wasn't the franchise's death knell after all. And I wonder, unburdened of that weight, removed from all that controversy, what exactly is Resident Evil 6 on its own merits? That's a question I hope to answer today. I skipped over RE6 back when it released, so I have no memories attached, good or bad. You might think, given its initial bad reception and sales, the game just stinks. You might also think, given the massive rebound in its sales, that maybe the fandom has gone back and looked on it more favorably. But the latter hasn't really happened, and it remains polarizing. So, the only way to find out the truth is with an autopsy. What better way to explore its insides than by booting it up and seeing what's there? Strap in, because there's a lot to say, and it's going to be a journey. When we first start the game, we're treated to a first-person scene of a character in trouble, trying to rescue their partner. We pan out to see this is Leon, apparently trapped in a chaotic city. He's hurt bad, barely hanging in there, and his partner is hurt worse. He drags her through a close encounter with a single zombie before launching himself into the fray of a street littered with them. We fight our way through, not knowing what the heck we're doing, but I kick a lot of zombies in the face and the music seems excited, so it's pretty amusing. All this before catching a helicopter, whose pilot turns into a zombie and causes a tense close-range struggle. The chopper ends up crashing. This will quickly become a theme. And we land on top of breaking glass above a mob of hundreds of zombies ready to rip us apart if we fall in. We roll over the cracked glass and whew. They narrowly escape, jump down, and see someone familiar. Cut. Alright, that set the stage. Our heroes will be pushed to the edge. It's full of spectacle, excitement, and drama. It feels like a blockbuster. The gameplay seems sort of silly, but fun. There's slow walking, QTEs, sure, but hey, it's a cinematic teaser. The cliffhanger itself is a little lame, but I'll roll with it. Where do we go from here? We might as well see what all that was about, and start with Leon. As we start, you'll see there are a bunch of online options. You have a co-op partner like RE5, though in single player, they're invincible and you can't trade items, unlike that game. And there's a feature here you can enable or disable where someone can possess an enemy in your game. Kind of nifty, but we'll cover that much later. I choose to play as Helena because I always love picking the random characters who probably won't ever reappear. And their campaign starts with a bang. Literally. Leon shoots the President of the United States after he's turned into a zombie. We just booted up the game 5 minutes ago and Leon's already killed the President. This is a bonkers way to start a story. We've only just started and it's escalated the stakes pretty damn high. Here we meet Leon's partner for his campaign, Helena. She's a Secret Service agent who teases that she has a lead on the assassination in a cathedral across town. She'll do that quite a lot before actually telling you anything. They're both natural suspects for the assassination, but they cover for each other after witnessing their mutual affection for the deceased president. As we take control, the first things I'm noticing are, I don't really like the UI. And the controls are kind of confusing in spots, but we'll get to that as we go. The mechanics are fairly simple, but they're so badly explained it took a while to really figure out how to play. But for now, things are simple. Very simple, actually. There are icons on the screen telling you where to go and what to do. Classic Resident Evil puzzle solving, this isn't, but let's just enjoy the mood and see what happens. We meet a survivor looking for his daughter. The controls are restricted during a lot of this opening segment, and it's kind of annoying, especially because I'm trying to play around and see what everything does. Still, if slow walking doesn't trigger you, the atmosphere is pretty solid horror fare. And the survivor seems to be coughing. We finally find his daughter, who's seriously injured. and then the 4 of us all get into an elevator together. 4 people in an elevator is claustrophobic in the best circumstances. This is not the best circumstances. Either one of them can turn at any moment, and in such tight quarters, it's not a place you want to run into a zombie. This is a good moment that genuinely feels dangerous.
Oh my god!
She's already gone! Shoot her!
But we don't really die, we make it to the bottom. And then it gets worse. We make a mad dash through the waves of zombies, and from there, we're off to try and escape the university. It's a fun place to go and play with the game's controls and get a feel for some of the crazy melee attacks and John Woo dives you can do. It seems they had the strange idea to turn Resident Evil into Gungrave. This is a real highlight of the game though. You can dive in any direction, including forward or back, and even roll around on the floor. You can feel the inspiration for this. Picture a horror movie where the hero is knocked to the floor, the villain raises an axe, and the hero rolls out of the way just before it connects. It speaks to tense, desperate, cinematic encounters. It's honestly pretty unique. I can think of a few games that have some of these maneuvers, but not all of them. Once you're done playing around, there's a decent siege with a long hallway where you'll fight off waves of zombies breaking in, but nothing too rough.
I've almost got it. Hang on.
We resume our mad dash to escape the campus and leave by car. Leon immediately finds a way to flip over the car. Like I said in the prelude, this will become a theme. Consider that foreshadowing. Luckily, he manages to, by sheer coincidence, crash the car mere inches away from the specific manhole cover that he needs to get around the fire created by the crash that he just created. I'd rather be lucky than good. To progress through the sewers, you need to touch these short-circuiting fuse boxes to progress. Never mind. This sewer part is dark, dingy, and kinda cool. You'll be attacked from the shadows by zombies, a dog, and even have to dodge a runaway train. A little ways down, there's a pretty cool bit with a herd of zombies casting long shadows over the wall, prompting another mad dash to a cable car. One of the game's cooler little scares.
This is a nightmare.
The inside of the cable car is dark, narrow, and tense. We carefully work our way through, and at the end, we meet our first survivor and our newest main character.
Wait, yo! Don't open that! Oh god! Peter! Peter, hang on! I'm coming!
Scratch that. We continue to the surface, whereupon we get blown up for some reason by a firefighter zombie, and then a car slams into us. I'm sure that was just a fluke. We probably won't get hit by any more cars. See? That was a motorcycle, not a car. We run through the streets as chaos overtakes the city. Like a true zombie movie, there are far more than we can handle, so we just have to run. We pass through a house where a family has died on the sofa. We should all be so lucky. The back door is locked, and you can probably tell where this is going.
However, a final transmission was received from the vessel before its disappearance. A transmission alluding to a potential attack from an organization.
We're taken to an area with a new enemy next, a Shrieker, who summons more enemies and yells at you. The horror of death and the plague of zombies is all that remains of this city. But at least since everyone's dead, there are no more cars to run into us.
Not going that way.
Damn it! Okay, how many more cars could possibly slam into us? That had to have been the last one. I'm gonna blow up some steam by mocking this little zombie stranded in the ceiling. They put in a zombie that can't hurt you, just dangling from the ceiling uselessly. Isn't that adorable? God damn it. Anyway, you'll see partner actions are back from RE5, meaning you get this great shot of ketchup and mustard as you wait for Leon. And we're waiting. And we're waiting. Oh, right. I accidentally left Leon trapped in a cage with a horde of zombies who are eating him. Oops. Anyway, we come to survivors fighting in the streets. With great struggle, we manage to save them, and an ambulance slams into me. How many more times is this going to happen? After that, we run over to a gun shop and have a long siege section. The game is kind of feeling like Left 4 Dead at this point. The varied types of zombies, the co-op, the shootouts with the other survivors. There was actually crossover content with Left 4 Dead, so it's probably not completely by accident. The fight is rough, and at the end we make it to a bus, which, itself, runs into zombie problems that we need to solve. And then, finally, ends Chapter 1. We assassinate the zombie president, fight our way off a zombie-infested campus, crash a car, dash through the sewers and across a train, fight through the streets while cars slam into us on every block, run through a house of the dead and several businesses, fight a co-op battle in an exploding gas station, go through a gun shop gauntlet, fight through a rooftop set piece followed by a battle on a bus. And all that was just Chapter 1 of the very first campaign. I sat back in disbelief at this. This was completely bonkers in a great way. I was looking forward to seeing what happened next. And the tempo keeps right up at the start of Chapter 2. The bus is overtaken by zombies, the Outbreak rejects all die, and now we're on the floor shooting for dear life as the bus falls over a cliff and explodes. I don't really even know who that bus driver was or where he came from. Doesn't matter, those guys are all dead and now we're in the graveyard. The graveyard is much cooler than that bus driver was anyway. The graveyard is very dark, lit exclusively by gothic street lamps, and a heavy rain blankets the area. The zombies here are all naked and extra decomposed. There are even empty graves being flooded by the heavy rains. Or maybe they aren't empty after all. This shot of the cathedral in the background is just gorgeous, great atmosphere. Anyway, we chase a dog with a key over to the cathedral. I've always hated dogs in RE, and I hate them significantly more than usual here. Diving helps you avoid their lunges, but they're still obnoxious. Afterwards, Leon takes a fall into a brief solo section. I miss this zombie that I'm trying to melee about a half dozen times. You've probably noticed how bad most of my gameplay clips are by now. I get better. Eventually. This section has a ton of those shriekers, and they're weird enemies. Are we friends? Are we playing tag here? Why are you just standing there and not attacking me? It was about here I got the hang of their mechanics. They eat crazy amounts of ammo when they're running around, but not when they're screaming. Attacking that growth only takes a couple of rounds. We finally make it to the cathedral, and the people refuse to let us in. And now we've got another siege. It's much tougher than the last few. These shriekers are annoying here because they take so long to reveal their growth, and you'll get murdered if you try to follow them around, so you really have no choice but to just hope they're about to scream when you happen to walk by them. The enemies just keep coming and coming, and they're mixed in with several different types of zombies. You hardly have any ammo and barely any weapons. This part was really frustrating for me, not gonna lie. Midway through, you're aided by a sniper who breaks a window to cover you. Cool guy. An important new character, maybe. Hold that thought. Finally, they let us in. Now we have to solve the easiest puzzle of all time in order to make our way deeper into the cathedral. towards whatever it is Helena is trying to show us that she still refuses to discuss despite us already being at the cathedral.
There's more here than meets the eye.
Robots in disguise. This is kind of a puzzle-solving bit, but not really since pointers tell you where to go. Man, listen to this ambient rain though. Let's just take a break from the zombie nightmare and just listen to the beauty of nature. Oh no, a statue trap. Whatever will we do? Okay, this is a better statue trap. I'm not sure why this cathedral has statues with laser pointers that try to kill you, but I do appreciate them putting in a tutorial room first, and putting the shutdown buttons right on them. This worked out even better than Leon's last laser room. Next, there's some light puzzle solving here, but I insist on shooting all of my problems. This was a nice change of pace, but it's time to actually open the staircase and descend beneath the cathedral. Or, never mind, it's time for a boss actually, since a horrible monster pops out of it. And so much for that sniper guy I mentioned earlier. Maybe these people were right not to let Leon in, considering we released a monster that killed all of them. Well, hindsight is 20/20. This boss takes way too many bullets to kill, but other than that, it's really not too bad. The other survivors try to help you, but the gas it emanates turns them into zombies, so it's kind of a neat little set-piece battle with a couple of moving pieces for scale. He does eventually go down after about 4,000 bullets, and we descend into the lab. Now, we've officially passed the cathedral to an area beneath it, and Helena still won't tell us anything. Talk about moving the goalposts. In any case, it's time to solve this puzzle. Different numbers open up different doors. Let's see. Yeah, I can't be bothered now, zombie. I'm pressing buttons. And next we get an odd little Ada cutscene. Don't worry, we'll figure out what that was all about in about 15 hours. And then...
We've got to do this again?
You said it, Leon, not me. So we have to do this again, and now we've got a new area. These cocoon things are creepy and all, but not when you're forcing me to think. We're running around these narrow lab corridors, constantly being ambushed from every direction. Even the characters are now complaining about how long this section has dragged on.
Why does everything have to be complicated?
Are we really still in the same chapter? We had an exploding bus shootout off of a cliff, fought through a graveyard, chased a dog across a graveyard, fell and got ambushed, had a massive siege fight, a long puzzle segment where we fought statues and light sources and bell towers, a long boss fight, 4 repetitive door code puzzle areas, and we're still not done? I'm just gonna go speedrun the rest of the chapter. So you end up in some catacombs. You find Helena's sister. Even now that we're in the catacombs, below the lab, below the cathedral, Helena still won't tell us anything until we leave. This is a meme by this point. We run around and Deborah turns into a monster. Ada pops up and we have a boss fight with too many phases and a pointless intermission, finally ending in a minecart Terminator ride, and then this bit, and then she dies, and then we find out she was kidnapped by this guy, Simmons, to coerce Helena into helping him compromise the president's security. And finally, we're done with Chapter 2. I think we both need a breather, so let's take an intermission here. This is a good spot to reflect a bit on these first 2 chapters, because around this point I started to get a hang of the mechanics, and by now I had noticed things that annoyed me. First of all, the Prelude was a terrible tutorial, and Chapter 1 was too. The quick shot, and I don't know why I just pronounced it that way, the quick shot is a move that instantly stuns an enemy with 1 bullet, and it is extremely useful. During the Prelude, I had no clue how useful it was, and by the time the action really starts in Chapter 1, I've already long forgotten how to do it. The herb mixing tutorial is also misleading. Leon says Helena is hurt bad, and Hunnigan tells him to mix herbs. Every RE vet knows that makes the herbs stronger, so this feels intuitive. But actually, mixing herbs doesn't make them stronger in RE6. You just add herbs to your case, which creates a single capsule of powder, which restores 1 bar of health. Mixing the herbs just gives you several of those capsules instead of 1 per herb. That might not sound dramatically different, but I was really confused for a good while why I couldn't fully heal despite mixing my herbs. Though, you can also just press the button rapidly to use several herbs to heal yourself in a row, so bully. It's still kind of a dumb healing system. Additionally, the first part of Chapter 1 often takes some controls away from you, and in strange tiers of control. For example, at one point you walk slowly and can't dive, at another point you walk normally and can dive, but can't run. This makes playing with the controls kind of counterintuitive. It's natural to press all the buttons to see what does what, but the restricted controls at the beginning convolute things. Moves that are supposed to work won't do so when you first try them, and you'll just assume they do nothing. Plus, I saw Leon dual-wielding, and I had to Google to discover that pressing triangle while aiming switches to his dual-wield stance. I don't recall the game ever telling me that literally anywhere. Also, doing the John Woo bullet dives with dual-wielding feels so right, but there's really not enough ammo to have fun with it. Phooey. At least Chapter 1 was very easy, so it still eases you into the game, so to speak. But in Chapter 2, things got tougher for me. A lot of that was my own fault. I still wasn't really sure how to play the game at this point, and ammo starts to get very scarce all of a sudden. What's more, an annoying quirk revealed its head since I switched to Leon for this chapter. The game remembers the weapons and items you picked up as the specific character you used. Meaning, since I shifted from Helena to Leon, I no longer have the shotgun, or any of my items and ammo. There's no way to trade items either, so I'd have to replay Chapter 1 if I wanted Leon to have that shotgun, let alone anything else. It really would have come in handy during that Cathedral Gauntlet too. This is a really silly mechanic that keeps you from switching characters freely between chapters, for really no reason. Some annoying gameplay conventions have come up by now too. There are sections when seemingly infinite enemies just pop out of nowhere. They come out of vents or drop in from above or wherever, but essentially they just appear in every direction to ambush you without notice for a prolonged period. It's kind of obnoxious because it starts to happen in nearly every encounter in the lab, and happens a lot in the future too. What's worse, there are scripted ambushes that happen at maddening times, such as when you grab a switch that needs a QTE, or immediately after cutscenes. This game is infamous because you can essentially be attacked during these real-time cutscenes, as the enemies don't freeze for any part of them. Along those lines, every boss has a wave of zombies with it. I think this is just so you can always get some ammo from them, but I really hate this convention, as in practice it only exists to make you unexpectedly run into one when you're trying to concentrate. Something annoying for Leon's campaign is that you can't shoot corpses that you know are about to spring to life. The shots just go through them until they animate. That's lame as hell, and the total antithesis of survival horror. I should talk about the music, too. It's fine, but I don't remember any of it whatsoever. So, that's that. Good talk. Also, the system where you get knocked down and either wait out the bar to get up or wait for your partner to rescue you is kind of annoying. This is one of those things RE6 just took from other popular games at the time. It's neat when it happens rarely, and once or twice there were even some tense last stands, but sometimes it happens a lot. Herbs only restore a single block of health, and you can be stuck in long areas without any new healing items. Meaning, you're probably running around with low health often, and once you're down to first time, every single consecutive tap on the shoulder will now bring you right back to the ground again. This can loop a lot in certain encounters, and it's pretty obnoxious to have 4 last stands basically in a row. Of course, dying brings you back to full health, so that's something. Dying is good, I guess. There's also a skill that gives you a couple of herbs when your partner revives you, which I got shortly after this, and is pretty handy. Nonetheless, that skill system is terrible, but like these campaigns revealing different parts of a whole story, you'll have to hear about every campaign to get my whole critique, so stay tuned for that later. But before we go on, I will say, I'm being critical because I'm analyzing it, but in truth, I was actually having a lot of fun at this point. I enjoyed the dramatic intro, the slow horror start, messing around with the really fun controls, and then the ensuing non-stop chaos. When I record footage for videos, I often make short clips whenever something cool happens in gameplay, and I was honestly doing this quite a lot in these first couple of chapters. I couldn't go 2 minutes without slamming a zombie into a wall, or Leon running up to a zombie mob and suplexing one right in front of me, or shooting a zombie out of the sky in mid-lunge, or all manner of crazy stuff. It was a blast even though I barely knew what the heck I was doing. Also, repeatedly kicking open doors in perfect synchronization as a partner action was always cool. Does that sense of excitement continue? You'll have to find out as we go. You probably already know the answer, don't you? Go ahead, challenge yourself and guess. In the meantime, I'll be playing Leon and the Temple of Doom, a fun spin-off game that, for some reason, takes the place of Leon's third chapter. The good news is this chapter is much shorter, and it's not that interesting, so we'll be through it in no time. As Chapter 3 begins, we contact Hunnigan to tell her that the presidential assassin is none other than Simmons, the National Security Advisor, who's unfortunately standing right there, and who tells us he's going to blame us for the assassination. Bizarrely enough, the catacombs below this lab seem to be some sort of massive ancient familial crypt for Simmons. This seems really weird. How rich is this guy? Our current NSA has a net worth of about $6 million. That's a lot of money, but not really building underground ancestral family catacombs rich. Actually, Simmons is part of some secret family of influential shadow Illuminati, so I guess maybe he should have a massive underground family tomb. But you don't learn that until much later anyway, and it's still not well explained, so it's kind of just bizarre in general. Anyway, let's see what the catacombs have to offer. There's some slicing blades and flamethrowers, there's crawling, you raise gates, there's QTEs, you lower this bridge. It takes forever for some reason, but we're patient. No need to skip ahead, let's just wait that out together. Oh, it's still lowering. Okay then, just a little more. A little more. And... wow, what a game. And then we're running. And then we're swimming. Kind of like Revelations. I did not care for the swimming in Revelations. But we do get chased around by a giant sea monster, so it's not all bad. You play cat and mouse together a number of times, but at the end of it, you're diving down a water slide as it chases you from below, shooting it dead before you reach the bottom, and you blow it to friggin' pieces just like the alligator from Resident Evil 2. There's actually a lot of little references to older RE games in 6, this is just the only one I've bothered to point out. We emerge on the surface to a beautiful sunset. Leon and Helena decide to fake their deaths in order to chase down Simmons, who's now in China. And that's Chapter 3. It's usually considered a serious nosedive from Chapters 1 and 2. Despite my snarkiness through the whole recap, I don't think it's as bad as its reputation. The short length was kind of a nice break from how insane the previous chapters were. It's just sadly the point where you know the survival horror part has died and you're just along for some cheap thrills. But you'll get them, no worries there. Chapter 4 starts us on an airplane with new costumes. You might notice we're in the same outfits as the prologue, so expect things to go down soon. And we immediately start with a rematch against an old friend. This time isn't too bad though, and you even get a magnum to make things easier. But getting murdered is fun, so here's this. The monster retreats, and we run through the passengers to get to the back of the ship. Given our track record with NPCs so far, what do you think are the odds that these people are going to survive the flight? Another QTE valve turning, and the monster returns, whereupon we need to defeat it, with another QTE. However, this ejects the creature from the plane, and almost ejects us with it. I can complain about QTE all I want, but monsters getting jettisoned from planes is always cool. And what a shock! These passengers are all zombies now. I was so sure this group of nameless NPC civilians was going to end up differently than the last 5. The odd semi-restricted controls from the tutorial strangely come back to haunt us here. You can't dash on the plane, which isn't communicated in any way, so you'll probably find this out by trying to slide into a zombie and accidentally getting bitten instead. Leon manages to find a way to crash yet another vehicle, where we happen upon Jake and Sherry and get into a boss fight. We'll talk about that in Jake's campaign. Long story short, they're teenagers, and this boss eats up a ton of bullets, and then we get separated by fire. I won't mention this is just like the RE2 intro, because I said I'd only mention the one reference earlier, and if I mention a second one, I'll have to mention all of them, and then we'll be here until Resident Evil 12. This next segment is actually pretty cool. China is home to another virus outbreak, conveniently enough. We come to a blockaded, quarantined section of town. From the trash heap, a new enemy appears, one that can't be killed. They stalk you around the map using their severed hands to hold you in place until they can grapple you. And, well, you really don't want to know what they do once they catch you. We need to gather 3 keys from this area to proceed, so we need to dodge these creepy new enemies while we navigate the area. I got lost on the 3rd key and made this way harder than it needed to be. This scenario was followed up by an even more terrifying scenario. A lab full of exploding Roombas. Man, this game goes places. However, after we prevail against the cleaning robots, paths collide. Leon and Chris meet for the first time in the franchise. Chris is chasing Ada, who is wearing a conspicuously weird outfit and also conspicuously acting nothing like Ada, but none of that has any bearing on Leon's story because why would it? This is supposed to be a character moment for Leon, leaving behind Ada instead of ignoring his mission to chase after her, but it doesn't really land. Sorry, Leon. We finally meet up with our big bad, Simmons, and some random goons who were never mentioned before this cutscene and will never be mentioned after it, who I guess are also in on the plot but not important enough to be identified. And we learn that Simmons is annoyed that it seems everyone and their pet monkey has somehow uncovered his clandestine plot to overthrow the government.
What? Are they running down the street screaming it to anyone who'll listen?
Sherry wanders off, howling about a vaccine, Simmons gets shot with a virus, and we chase him onto a train where he yammers about his motives. The president was going to reveal the government's role in Raccoon City and quote-unquote plunge the world into chaos. Dude, there's been 3 massive zombie outbreaks in this game alone. Revelations had Terra Grigia. RE5 had a whole damn country turn. Cities turning into zombies is slice of life at this point. I think your world's already in chaos. And you hatched another Raccoon City just to cover up the first one? Does that seem smart to you? We need to shoot this guy, now. And so I do. I have no idea whether anything I'm doing is working or makes any difference, but it's certainly cinematic. Simmons then gets abducted by his family, falls off the train, and here we are. We learn Sherry and Jake were abducted, so that's what Chapter 5 will be about. Just kidding, we tell Chris to deal with it for us in his own campaign. I would go into more detail about this Jake stuff, but we're just going to have to go through it again later in his own campaign, so I'm skimming over it for now. Whereupon, the city is abruptly hit by a virus-carrying missile. And scene. Chapter 5 promises to be the pandemonium that was teased by the Prelude. The exhausted Leon and Helena barely clinging to life as they fight through a massive city of the dead. In practice, the whole chapter is a lousy, endless boss fight and a couple disappointing scenes. The reason Helena was nearly dead in the prologue wasn't because they'd been fighting through insane battles for hours, it's just because they got hit by a truck, mere moments after the virus first hit. Wow, that was sure worth teasing. You do fight through the streets with soldiers as the gas is spreading, but it doesn't last long, so it's mostly a letdown. The Prelude sections are retreaded with no variation, aside from ignoring the slow walking part. And we pan to see that the character they encountered at the end of it was Simmons. Wow. Listen, that was a lame cliffhanger to begin with. A great cliffhanger is when something happens that changes everything and makes your mind rush with the possibilities of what will happen next. A lame cliffhanger is having something happen and just not showing us. And even worse, that's the payoff. Simmons? If seeing Simmons here made you sigh with disappointment, just you wait. Simmons turns into a T-Rex, and here we have a long, bullet sponge of a boss fight. It's just a total bore. The only fun part is when he's stunned, you get to go up and beat the crap out of him. For some reason, this is just the best as Helena. I don't know, Helena just slugging him repeatedly makes me chuckle for some reason. I think I might be insane after this much Resident Evil 6. Midway through, though, there's a Jurassic Park ripoff chase scene. This really hurts me. We're fighting a T-Rex and we're ripping off Jurassic Park, and somehow it's still so boring. I have no idea whether I'm doing anything right or whether it even matters. This fight resumes and continues to go on forever with no indication of ending soon, and he hardly even does anything. Just look at how much time I waste clearing my inventory space and clumsily reorganizing my herbs in the middle of a climactic boss fight. The game is so on autopilot, it doesn't even seem to care if I'm playing it anymore. I don't know whether anything I do in the Jeep chase matters, I don't know if anything I'm doing here matters, I just shoot and shoot and shoot, trapped in a cycle of living death. Anyway, we kill Simmons and he's finally dead, and we get this scintillating romantic nonsense with Leon's.
She's more than just a friend, isn't she? You have feelings for her.
Just kidding about Simmons being dead, he's here yet again chasing him up a rope. QTE and Simmons, all of my favorite things. This is my idea of purgatory. This rope climb goes on and on and on and on. Finally, we get some action. I'm high up in a skyscraper covering Leon as he fights Simmons. I use up all my ammo covering him and then what? Does it even matter if I shoot, or does the scene just end when it's ready? Once again, it doesn't even care if I'm playing or not. I just run around awkwardly with no ammo, waiting. Ada and Leon seem to be having a big cinematic moment down there, but I'm just up here watching. This is a perfect allegory for Resident Evil 6 as a whole. Finally, the cutscene triggers and Simmons dies for good this time. Haha, just kidding. He immediately comes back in yet another form before you even resume control. Again, even the characters are sick of this.
He just doesn't quit, does he?
Enough is enough.
Some unremarkable regular gameplay, and another Simmons boss fight. This time, he's a bullet sponge, and you also need to bait him into eating a specific zombie to hurt himself several times. Great. But thankfully, he finally dies, and we get to our escape helicopter. Haha, just kidding, it's Simmons again. Thankfully, this time you only need to shoot him and he really does die. Good lord, I think QTEs and Simmons boss fights make up 40% of this game. We escape and cut to the future, where we let Helena off the hook for helping to assassinate the president, and Leon and her go their separate ways as she tries yet again to ship Leon and Ada. And that's the end of Leon. He hasn't been in a game ever since. Barring remakes, I mean. The issue with Leon's story is it has no gravity whatsoever. The president is assassinated. That's heavy, yet we see zero repercussions from that. We fight with a group of survivors. They die. Okay, we take refuge with more survivors. They all die. Okay, we meet Helena's sister. She dies. Okay, the presidential assassin is revealed to be the National Security Advisor. Shock. But we never have to deal with the protections of his status or his influence over us as government agents. We're even suspects in the assassination, and it still doesn't matter. We're never pursued by police, he doesn't cut us off from Hunnigan, the BSAA soldiers still help us, and it never changes our actions. Leon fakes his death. Okay, so, does Leon even have a life? Are his friends affected by his false death? Does Claire go to investigate his death and expose herself to danger as a result? Does Leon have a wife somewhere that thinks she's a widow because he can't compromise her safety and let her know he's really alive? No, absolutely nothing happens as a result. It doesn't matter. Leon letting Ada go is supposed to be a moment of character growth for him, but it's an odd one because they barely interact the whole game, and he frankly has no idea what she was doing in the first place, nor does he ever find out. Granted, that's what the other campaigns are for, but it doesn't really feel like a satisfying standalone story as a result. For what it's worth, I at least feel like they were trying to reconcile Leon's identity against the cartoonish nature of his last appearance. He's mostly a good-looking stoic guy here, but he does have one-liners like RE4 and even cracks some jokes. He still feels nothing like that guy for the most part, and his one-liners are pretty lame, but at least they kind of tried to morph him into a cohesive version of the character that could work. Although it didn't. His partner, Helena, is just there to forward the plot and look pretty. I don't mean that as an insult, just look at them. They look like modeling partners on a shoot in half the cutscenes. The devs really love the opportunity to frame them together in every shot. She kind of acts a lot like a female Leon, being pretty stoic herself. Her bond with her sister is basically the emotional core and motivation of her story, but it doesn't connect very well. We never meet her sister until she turns, know nothing about her or Helena beforehand, and we learn so little else about Helena after that it doesn't really resonate. And now we come to Chris. The developers have said that each campaign represents a different kind of horror. Chris's campaign represents the horrors of war. As you can imagine, his is the most action-packed campaign of all of them. He also has the best story, one that's even pretty effective at times, and even accommodates the constant mayhem. You can feel that the initial idea for RE6 was maybe to follow up on 4 and 5, which both makes pretty obvious sense, and explains why Leon and Chris are both here. But given the action extravaganza of RE5 and all the trend chasing present in RE6, you can definitely get the sense that Leon was there to ease you in, and Chris is sort of the core RE6 experience. Leon and Chris both have meaty campaigns, but the remaining two amount to what seem like bonus ideas in comparison, and are much shorter, Ada's especially. Chris's personality and even his look at the end of the game even carry over to Village, whereas nothing else in RE6 really carries over anywhere. And his campaign is where RE goes from survival horror adjacent to straight up Call of Duty. This is the apex of what this era of Resident Evil was about in Capcom's eyes. And, while as a Resident Evil fan I find that deeply troubling, in retrospect, Chris kind of has the best campaign. The controls are much better suited to his campaign, and his story is actually the most effective and realized of all of them, even if the premise for it takes some effort to get behind. We'll talk about that after Chapter 2, which is a flashback chapter, and again at the end of the campaign. With that preamble out of the way, let's get started with Chris. Chris is currently a drunk with amnesia. We find him at a bar harassing the bartender. He's soon bothered by a former teammate, Piers Nivens, who reminds him who he is, and reveals that Chris essentially disappeared after their team was wiped out. My very first thought here is that Piers Nivens is a stupid name. He's a good character though. Truthfully, there's not that much more to him than a good guy soldier type, but somehow he manages to be pretty endearing anyway, and he serves as a great foil to Chris. The rest of his crew is apparently waiting off-screen for this big entrance. They peer pressure Chris to getting back into the fight, which he does. And there's no real context here as to what fight he's flying into exactly, but thankfully we already know what's going on in China from Leon's campaign.
The operation is planned.
Or do we? Who the heck is shooting at us?
They're killing indiscriminately. There's no reasoning with these bastards.
Okay, but who are these guys? Ah, and now we have the reveal. BOWs with guns. We've officially reached the franchise's Shadow the Hedgehog phase. Okay, in all fairness, there was a lot of precedent to this. Enemies have had rocket launchers for years, and RE5 even had entire rooms full of Magini with rifles towards the end. But we all just kind of pretended that part didn't happen. Thankfully, we also have our own teammates to help us fight these monsters with guns, and they're really great. These enemies with guns, by the way, are called Jawavo, but I feel like I'm going to constantly stutter on that word, so they're just kind of enemies from here on. Also, something fun that you might have noticed is the UI changes in every campaign. It's a neat touch to make every campaign feel a little more thematic. We fight through the streets and across these rooftops until we run into a weird flying type enemy. Take note, these are the least weird enemies you're going to see during Chris's campaign, so look forward to some of those. The last leg of this chapter takes us through a building, and this part is actually really cool. The close quarters gunfights really suit the game's mixture of gunfire and melee, especially with all the cool stuff you can pull off. I feel like I'm in that martial arts movie, The Raid. A lot of fun. The fun gets spoiled, though, with the appearance of a new enemy. A really weird new enemy. It's an insect-legged thing with an upside-down torso leaning out of it that shoots you with a machine gun with one arm. I don't think my footage is likely to do justice to just how silly they are, so hopefully that description helped. They also, kidnap people, kind of, and while kidnapping someone, it'll just run from point A to point B while knocking you out of the way and then skidding right back to point A in the stupidest chase scene in memory. I'm sure some of this was on me, but yeah. After all that nonsense, then we get ambushed in a broken elevator with a freaking rocket, which launches us into another huge firefight, where I'm utterly baffled by the cover controls. In my defense, the cover controls are really unusual, but I'm still leaving this in here just so you can make fun of me. And this is with an entire campaign already under my belt. Anyway, we fight our way out, and we leave the hostages we've rescued to be escorted out, as HQ starts bombing the building. This is Resident Evil 6, so naturally, rubble falls and now we're stuck in a building about to be bombed. Thankfully, Chris and Piers are very understanding about being exploded by their own allies. We head for the only exit and make a daring escape just as the building is blown to bits, and that's the last of an exciting Chapter 1. Chris has a PTSD flashback upon seeing some corpses and utters a single word: Finn. And Chapter 2 is that PTSD flashback. Chris gives a little hero speech here, the impressionable young Finn becomes a fanboy, and if you haven't figured out that Finn is going to die brutally in the next hour, I just told you, so you know now. Apparently some European guerrillas are using BOWs, blah blah, the details aren't really important and are barely explained. We're dropped into a war zone as the Call of Duty intensifies. Before long, there are even snipers. Snipers in Resident Evil? I could tolerate the centipede centaurs with the upside-down machine guns, but this crosses a line. By the way, please keep a tally every time you see an explosion. I'd be really interested to know what the total is by the end of the game. After a bit, a giant appears, and you have this strange mini-boss fight where you're locked in position, can only move left to right on the balcony. Can I just go and leave the balcony? See? Why couldn't I just do that a minute sooner? This giant is a total drag. Chris calls it an APC, and you have to survive until it arrives, which is exceedingly boring, presents zero challenge, and seems to just take an eternity. You can apparently damage it in a certain way that will speed things up, but I just did what the dialogue told me to. In RE6, you often have no idea whether you're actually doing damage to something, so I didn't really feel the need to keep shooting it. The next scene is full of rockets in a timed siege. Joy. I sure love infinitely respawning rocket snipers. What fun. Let's supercut all the explosions.
I need you to cover me till I get it set. I need you to cover me till I get it. Oh, grab the cover!
We run away from the rockets and end up in front of a goddamn tank. A tank? Man, they're not even pretending to be Resident Evil anymore. I can handle the snipers, but tanks? That just crosses a line. We come to a cinematic moment next with a collapsing bridge. This part, I don't really get what I'm supposed to do and somehow end up dying repeatedly. It turns out you're supposed to crawl forward, not away, which I did the first time, but for some reason Chris died anyway. I die like a half a dozen times in this stupid scripted scene. There's some bridge drama, and eventually we blow up the tank and meet Sherry and Jake. Good news, we replayed the scene in their story, so we don't have to talk about it. Next, we need to stop two more giants by having Finn blow up some anti-aircraft guns that are preventing us from calling it an airstrike. Like most things in this game, this goes on way too long. Move to the anti-aircraft gun. Clear an area. Defend Finn against waves of enemies. Wait for Finn. Move to the next area. Defend Finn against more waves of enemies. Wait for Finn again. Move to the next area. Defend Finn against waves of enemies. Wait for Finn a third time. Did we really need 3 anti-aircraft guns? Why not 2? Why not just 1? Better yet, why not 0? It's not hard or anything, but the repeated scripted ambushes from nowhere just get tiring. Like a kid who wants to play the same 3-second game over and over. And on one turret in particular, he seems to get into this loop where the boss will hit him every 4 seconds, dragging things out even longer. And whenever you're predictably ambushed while Finn is setting the charges, he stops setting the charges to help fight, and the same when the boss targets him, dragging it out even further. After all this, we're still not out of the woods, as the strike only killed 1 giant. You have to kill the other one yourself by tearing out the rod on its back. You stun him and then jump on his back. The only rough part of this is the ladder. You can't just climb up on him, you need to be on a 2nd floor building to jump on him. And when you stun him, he staggers backwards, meaning you have to down him from one side, then jump to the floor and hope there's a ladder nearby to reach him before he gets back up. I got plain lucky, as the AI downed him for me just as I was passing a ladder leading right to him. If you know the layout and where to go, it's not really that bad, but if you don't, it's really annoying. Finally, we head inside City Hall and meet a new enemy. These shelled creatures are pretty cool. You blow off chunks of their armored skin with certain attacks, and then you finish them off with the exposed fleshy bits. They're fun to fight. Except the first time, because it's RE6 and you have no idea what you're doing. We then meet Ada, who's masquerading as a civilian and acting shifty. She tells you these enemies are all the byproduct of the C virus, provided by a group called Neo Umbrella. Yet more firefights take place before Ada betrays us and affects our whole team with the virus, Finn predictably included. And thus ends an hour that could have been a cutscene. I'm shocked that I got a B rank considering how abysmally bad I did, and I'm also shocked the time was only 70 minutes, because frankly it felt an hour longer. This chapter really wasn't my favorite. In any case, we see now why Chris had amnesia. He lost it when his team was wiped out. Which is slightly weird because he's had a team wiped out multiple times before. The Bravo team in RE1, he thought he lost Jill just before RE5, and you also lose 2 other minor teams throughout RE5. And he ends RE5 saying he's more certain than ever that the fight was worth it. Yet the very next time we see him, well, he's like this. Still, I suppose the saying goes, the straw that broke the camel's back. Congrats, Finn, you're the straw. We warp back to the present, and things really get wild in Chapter 3. We barely get moving before we have a long siege fight with an invincible chopper in the background. I get that the chopper is armored, but I seriously can't even hurt the guy shooting out the door. What sense does that make? And here we meet our silliest enemy yet, grasshopper people with machine guns, who, well, hop around. I'm kidding you, right? That can't be what you're seeing on screen right now. I just made that up. Eventually, the game gets as bored of this siege as I am, and we can finally attack the chopper with our new weapon, a grenade launcher. Actually, I'm going to complain about this too, because targeting the helicopter is a pain because it flits around everywhere, and it takes a ludicrous amount of grenades to down this thing. And the helicopter stunlocks me at one point too. This helicopter fight only lasted 3 minutes, but it was 3 minutes of hell. Well, 3 minutes of unpleasantness, I guess. Thankfully, this next bit is really good. We finally move on and we start to chase our target for this chapter, a giant snake that can camouflage and turn invisible. We see some of our teammates already didn't have much luck. And next there's a great scene here where we see the snake eat one of our guys, and Chris is so pissed off he charges blindly after it. And there's a great moment of tension when Piers tries to calm him down.
What the hell were you thinking, pulling a kamikaze stunt like that?
These are my men. You follow my lead or I'll find someone who will.
Do you even hear yourself?
Fall in line, soldier.
He even starts to yell at the other soldiers who question the wisdom of what they're even doing.
How are we supposed to drop this thing if we can't even see it?
Shut up and keep moving!
The hunt begins. And it doesn't go well. The team falls into chaos and loses member after member.
Captain, I can hear Jack. That's him screaming. Coming, man. Just hang on!
Marco, don't move! Hold your position, do you hear me? I'm on it! That's an order!
Until finally, we have a close scrape and then combat the enemy outright. This is a pretty fun fight with some cinematic flair too. It's too long, like everything in RE6, but it was still enjoyable. And the snake hunt is just a great moment narratively. Chris was fragile to begin with. We fought through a chapter and a half of hell already, desperate to avenge his team. We all fight through it together, until this point when the team starts to unravel. Chris gets more and more pissed with every casualty, but completely disregards their reservations and forces them to march forward to their deaths. Chris gets most of our new team killed and hardly even reacts to it, because he's so increasingly single-minded in his quest to avenge the old one. I love that trope of a character who's so tunnel-visioned to their own anger that the world happening around them hardly even seems to exist. Come to think, a veteran with PTSD hunting an invisible snake is another pretty apt metaphor for RE6. Think about that one. We finally electrocute the thing, and miraculously, Marco survived! Briefly, now he's a pile of bees. Thankfully this isn't a boss fight, which would have been a bit much after the armored chopper and the snake back to back. He dies easily, and it turns out Marco's heart was made out of C4. Chris blames himself for not seeing that Marco was a plastic explosive all along. Chris is now more unstable than ever, having lost another man to Ada, and Piers stops to confront him.
Chris, we need to stay calm.
After what she's done to us, how many of our men are dead because of that bitch?
I'm right there with you, Captain. But your personal vendetta isn't gonna get us anywhere. If you hadn't been blinded by vengeance, we could have prevented some of those deaths.
Shut up.
Do you even care about our mission anymore?
Shut up!
I feel sorry for all the men that died believing in you. What happened to the legendary Chris Redfield, huh? What happened to you? It's a good thing Finn's not around to see you this way.
I'm going after Ada. HQ, this is Alpha Leader. I need a location on Ada Wong.
I'm going with you. Someone's got to keep an eye on you, whether you want them to or not.
Alas, this is Resident Evil 6, and these great scenes need to be brought down to earth by some bullshit gameplay. We have a brief, quiet section to really breathe first, and then we have the cinematic action sequence where we're chased by another chopper, and I have no freaking idea. This should be as simple as running to the end. First off, half the time I get hit by a rock at a split second after the cutscene, even when I'm already running full speed ahead. Sometimes it does damage, other times it doesn't. I have little idea why I dodge it sometimes and not others, but that's the least of my problems as I get an automatic game over repeatedly for reasons I can't even figure out. What happened there? Okay, I guess I took too long here. Okay, bad luck, he knocked me down. Okay, this time I'm using a grenade and running right past them.
We can just get to that building!
Still a no. Alright, this time I'll quickly stun him with the shotgun and run through.
We can just get to that building!
Still no. No mercy. I'm using the grenade launcher. Ammo be damned. I blitz past the enemies and dash to...
We can just get to that building!
abruptly die. Again. Again. I tried the exact same tactic and...
We need to reach that building!
Oh, the game finally allows me through. Keep in mind, every repeat of this scene involved being immediately whacked in the face with a missile right after the cutscene, and then a full minute of running forward, only to die for reasons I didn't even understand. It was annoying. I haven't really heard this being a trouble spot for other people, so I frankly have no idea what was going on there. But this is a recurring theme of RE6. A simple action set piece happens, and I'm just confused at what to do, or whether I'm supposed to be doing anything, or whether my actions are having an effect, or why I died. Modern games have set pieces like this usually be brain dead and impossible to fail. That's a lame cop-out of game design, but, well, we see the other side of the coin right here. Unfortunately, the helicopter coin was also two-sided, which is an obtuse way of saying we now have a second chopper to fight. Again? Didn't we just do this 20 minutes ago? At least this time is easier. You exchange cover fire and it goes down pretty quickly, despite goons trying to slice you up while you do it. I'm still bad at the cover system, by the way. Following the chopper fight, you get a really large and really random explosion. I guess the explosion per minute ratio was falling behind the developers' goals and they needed to catch up. Now we're at least toward the end of the chapter, chasing Ada into a lab. Whoops, missed the slide. Whoops, missed the slide. Whoops, slid into a laser. But I nailed that one at least. Now we have the Roombas again, just like Leon. We chase Ada, but run into Leon as we saw earlier in his campaign. Honestly, this cutscene works a lot better on this side. We know how angry and shell-shocked Chris is, and how obsessive he is in pursuing Ada at all costs. And when Leon gets in the way, there's a real moment of tension where it seems like they might be in conflict. How far will Chris go? In Leon's campaign, you don't even know that Chris is mentally troubled, you don't know what Ada did, and you weren't even there to see her, so you just stumble onto the whole thing with no context. Although, if he's defending Ada, why did he let Chris go? Leon's pep talk seems to work, as Chris is decidedly more chill after this scene, but their deal was just the same status quo as before the cutscene. Stop thinking, there's a car chase now. Another apt metaphor for the game. Now it's time to chase Ada before she can get to the harbor and escape the city. Bump, bump, bump. This is just a typical rail segment, but zooming through the streets of Hong Kong does look pretty aesthetic. They don't call the city Hong Kong, mind you, but it's Hong Kong. We switch from shooting to driving, fall hopelessly behind, crash the car, and die. Just kidding. No, not really kidding, basically that happens. And Chapter 3 finally comes to a close. Whew, what a chapter. A giant snake, a bee monster, a car chase, and not one but 2 armored helicopters, and a fleet of grasshopper men to boot. And there's no breather coming up. As Chapter 4 opens, we wake up and chase Ada into her ship. Here we face elite enemies who are the same as the guys we've been shooting but have bug eyes. Unfortunately, they also have a legion of snipers fixed on our position, but thankfully their blind spot is people moving slowly across monkey bars. The aim is to fight through this wave of enemies to the next area, which is sealed off by a security shutter. The game being what it is, the correct way to open the shutter is to launch a gigantic freaking missile at it.
Now that's how you open a door.
Taking out the snipers here is a bit annoying. Unless you have the zoom skill equipped, it's tough to snipe them back. Thankfully, we can always tank hits, miss, and accidentally explode a barrel standing next to them. I think we're all ready to move on from this area, so let's dash across and get moving. Piers, come on, stop getting shot and let's move. I snickered so hard at Piers immediately getting yanked off screen as I go through the door, especially after he was beaten up so hard just getting to the door. We get to the outer deck after more fighting, and the scenery sure is pretty, but we've got to get upstairs. This door says lock, so guess we can't go through it. Only way forward is through a room with a BOW piloting a fighter jet, in case you thought the game wasn't over the top enough yet. This jet fighter has odd angular machine guns that can follow you around the room, too. And failing that, it'll just spin around to face you. But you could just snipe the pilot and move on. That was nothing compared to what we face next, the most difficult part of the game by far. Getting down this elevator.
Hurry up!
You don't have to tell me twice.
Piers!
Yeah, I know. I'm on it.
Piers!
Roger. I'm on it.
I hate that the first aid spray is in the same wheel as all the grenades. These mutations are getting to be a bit much too. I've stopped even mentioning them individually because they've just gotten to be so many, and they seem to mutate sometimes after just a bullet or two. Finally, we catch up to Ada at last, and Chris has a chance to say the most on-the-nose line of the game.
This isn't about vengeance. It's about justice.
Unfortunately, we now have bigger things to worry about. Ada, we already had that plot in Leon's first chapter. Ada, we already had that plot in Resident Evil 5. Chris and Piers have now waited so long to shoot Ada that somebody else comes by and does it for us. No time to process that, Chris has to stop the apocalypse. again. Chris really can't catch a break. We just learned missiles full of virus are shooting from a sister ship, so we race to the hangar to find a plane. We encounter some old invincible friends along the way. First, we're stuck in a burning room with them, then we're off to nab 3 keys, same as Leon's campaign. The narrow halls of the ship aren't as good of a venue for a cat and mouse game, and you're so armed to the teeth you can just blow them out of the way, so it isn't as interesting as Leon's version. Also, scratch what I said earlier about those locked doors, the text written on them is a lie. But enough of these guys. We find a jet, and now it's time for Resident Evil Ace Combat Afterburner Deluxe. We get to blow up some things here and cover Piers as he makes his heroic attempt to disarm the missile. The missile must have the same armor plating as the helicopters because it refuses to explode no matter how much you shoot at it. Sadly, the missile narrowly manages to escape. We warn Leon, who tells us in return to rescue Jake, who was captured after the last time we saw him. Leon reveals that not only does Jake have antibodies for the C-Virus, he is also none other than the son of Wesker, which gives us one final posthumous entry for the montage.
Wesker?
And this rescue operation brings us straight into Chris's final chapter. Chris and Piers open the final chapter with a great heart-to-heart.
It's been 3 years since I killed Wesker. I can't let this war follow me forever. After we rescue Jake, I'm turning in my gun.
What? Wait a minute.
It's about time someone took my place. I'd be honored if it was you.
I don't think I'm ready for that.
You made it this far, haven't you?
All right. This is it.
Alright, and now we're pumped. Time for some action typing. Bring it on, game. What do you have left to throw at us? Simmons another 6 times? I could beat Simmons another 10 times. Let's do it. There's a solid set of action set pieces here, but nothing really that noteworthy, until we get to another siege fight. Ada taunts us and builds up the final boss, so I'll let you listen in too.
One missile and this world will be transformed into a new, from my last and greatest creation. He will thrive in the ashes of the burning cities, conquering all that remains after the fall. He will reign as king of the new era.
Beyond it, we rescue Jake, who isn't especially grateful because he learns that Chris killed his dad. You know, his mass murderer dad who tried to destroy the entire human race. How dare you? Really though, Chris, could you not have waited until later to tell him this? Who did you think you were helping by doing that? The scene is emotionally charged and all, but it doesn't work. Jake decides to just get over it, and we fight together up the elevator for a bit. Until he appears. Meet House, the vehicle to spread the virus worldwide. Thankfully, he was awakened early due to some meddling protagonists, so he's not fully developed yet. But we're gonna run like hell anyway, so here's a scripted chase scene. However, once we reach a proper arena, it's time for a proper boss fight. And, okay, not too tough. Good work, time to go home, guys. Never mind. Piers willingly injects himself with the C-Virus to save Chris, and now the real final battle begins. It's really easy to screw yourself over with this fight. You use up a lot of ammo during the previous fights, and this guy eats up a lot of it. The trick here is to break all his red fleshy bits and then move in to deal damage. The fight can be really annoying. Piers times his attacks badly, running out of ammo is a problem, running around to hit weak points is a pain. It's not so bad if you know what you're doing and come prepared. Me, I ended up in a zero ammo slugfest and brought the thing down with my bare hands. Which was pretty epic, not gonna lie. This is a fun fight, warts and all. Piers finishes him off in dramatic fashion, and the two are left to deal with the sacrifice he had to make. We're so close to the finish line now. We just gotta get out of here alive. One last hurrah. And we've made it.
Piers! No, don't do this! Open the door!
Listen to me! We can still both get out of here! There's still time! What are you doing? No, Piers, don't! You can still make it out! God damn it, Piers!
Piers, open the goddamn door! That's an order! No. Piers!
And Chris emerges on the surface, alone. After the credits, we get a scene mirroring the first one, with Chris eating a steak, now wearing the same outfit he'll later have in Village. A new, fresh-faced soldier greets him, and Chris leaves for a mission, still fulfilling his role as captain despite the events of the game. And so ends Chris's story, for now. Time for another intermission to reflect on all of that. So, that campaign was probably the best one in the game. There's a lot of great set pieces, the moment-to-moment gameplay in RE6 is actually pretty satisfying, and his campaign makes the best use of its unique controls. To boot, that was a great storyline for Chris. There are some genuinely interesting ideas in there too, like the fact he got his current team killed trying to single-mindedly avenge the old one. The fact just as soon as he forgave himself for what happened to his last team, he ends up in the same position at the end, losing his entire team once more and surviving all alone all over again. I've never been much of a Chris fan, but I kinda was after this game. The basis for his character arc was a bit shaky, and so was the turning point, sure, but it was electrifying to watch from beginning to end, and Piers served as a great tragic hero. Chris has always been the soldier guy, and they finally used that to say something worth hearing. But then there's the rest of the conversation. We're now through the main campaigns. Ada's is practically an afterthought, and Jake's is significantly shorter and retreads a lot of ground. You see, the more I play this game, the more it feels like uncovering some strange relic, an object whose purpose was seemingly obvious, yet still makes you feel like there's something you're missing. That was kind of a non sequitur. I'm getting loopy after this many explosions, but that's just it. You've probably noticed something by now about RE6. There's absolutely no moment to rest. It's set piece after set piece, after boss, after boss, after boss, after QTE, after QTE. It never lets up. And it's largely delivered through linear corridors with hardly any exploration. This isn't helped by being such a long game, either. After a while, it's just plain numbing. Okay, marching into more enemies. Okay, another boss. Okay, another explosion. Where am I again? Honestly, it does work at times. The insane chaos of Leon running through that city streets really suited the segment, and it was a blast. And while the horrors of war premise for Chris lost me somewhere around the Grasshopper people, there are high points when it really genuinely pulled it off. At some point, embroiled in so much combat, I felt as burned out by the fighting as Chris does. I genuinely felt his frustration as he's railroaded into chasing after an invisible enemy and losing man after man while he just watches. I'm in the same boat. That's why I picked Chris instead of Piers after the first chapter, because it really feels like you're supposed to experience this narrative through his eyes. But all that action and constant sequence makes a whole campaign feel kind of exhausting. It's unfair to compare this game with RE4 Remake for obvious reasons. But that game truly feels like an evolution of 4 and 5. The controls are even still sort of tanky. and there's a very, very deliberate pacing and tightly designed set pieces. There are always moments of quiet and minimal threats in between the set pieces, and even more open chapters in between them. If it were designed like RE6, the opening village fight would be 2 rooms away from the cabin fight, the El Gigante would be in the next room, he'd come back to haunt you 2 screens later, and once you finally killed him, you'd be fighting Del Lago all within the same hour. The issue here is that this just kills all tension. The longer action drags on, the more it becomes monotonous. That's just basic psychology. Resident Evil games revolve around the ebb and flow of danger and safety because they're fundamentally built around tension. Even the games that aren't quite survival horror still have this in common. Having set pieces every 3 minutes, with checkpoints just as often, kills all tension. What's more, there's a sense of progression through 4 and 5 because of the weapon upgrade system. The weapon upgrade system is great. By using it, weapons can uncover totally new properties, and you can do crazy things like upgrade your shotgun to carry 99 rounds. You feel your weapons turning into something new, and it also gives you choice in which ones to develop and how. The RE6 equivalent is the skill system, which is awful. I promised you I'd talk about this earlier, and here we are. It's awful not just because the weapon upgrade system was much better, but on its own merits too. Chiefly because you're locked to an utterly pitiful 3 slots, and every upgrade is ludicrously expensive. I'm not going to play around with other loadouts because I'd have to grind endlessly to do so, and all the loadouts are so restrictive regardless, since you can only have 3. I'd love to buy a half dozen of these and go to town, but it's impossible. I just found a couple that worked and called it a day. What's even worse, there are skills that increase damage against specific enemy types, which seems okay, but Chris and Jake never meet any zombies. If you wasted your points in that skill because Leon's zombie campaign comes first, whoops, joke's on you. Thus, there's just minimal sense of progression, and combined with the pacing, the game just devolves into fight after fight after fight after fight. Actually, now that I think of it, a couple elements in 4-make do feel vaguely related to ideas in RE6. I mentioned in the very first video on my channel how RE4 Remake has a few tricks to keep you closer to the action, rather than just being a shooting gallery. RE6 kind of does the same thing. Think about these elements of 4-make. Ammo is intentionally kept tight across all your weapons, and you need to utilize melee abilities to compensate for that. You can parry some enemy attacks, and even use the crouch to duck under certain enemy attacks. Any of this sound familiar? They all apply to RE6 as well, just implemented a lot worse in 6. Still, all in all, if RE4 Remake is an evolution of RE4 and 5, RE6 feels more like a mutation. They took some common ideas and jerked them into a decidedly different direction, mostly in order to chase trends. We'll get to that idea, but first we have to get through Jake's campaign. Meet Jake, a mercenary who happens to be the son of Wesker. He's a 20-year-old with attitude. His partner character is Sherry, the other youngest character and a fellow daughter of the supervillain. His mercenary platoon is tricked into injecting the C-virus, whereupon Jake discovers his immunity and meets Sherry, who was sent there by the government to collect him for that very reason. I've yet to mention this, but each character has a character-specific weapon. Helena has a special shotgun with a stylish attack, Leon has a handgun that he can double up, and so on. Jake's character-specific weapon is no weapon. He has special hand-to-hand moves instead. His campaign accordingly features a little more melee opportunities than others. His other gimmick is running. His campaign was apparently focused on the horror of being chased. This largely refers to Ustanak, a stalker character who you'll be running from a lot, but there's also a lot of other sequences where the best thing to do is just run past every enemy. Of course, all this martial arts and chasing ends up feeling way more like a Jackie Chan movie than a horror movie. That said, let's get started. We start in the same conflict as Chris's second chapter, but on the other side. Sort of. His teammates were all turned into monsters, so Jake considers the job cancelled and tries to leave. Only problem is, Chris and the BSAA are on site trying to kill him because he's wearing the same uniform as the monsters. We get a quick dose of Jake's athleticism before being attacked by a BSAA chopper, triggering a gripping chase where the chopper waits for you to finish QTEs and then kills itself. No wonder Chris loses so many teams. If Chris's campaign was Call of Duty, Jake's is Final Fight. Let's beat up some things. Punching things that fly is a little bit of a problem. Better to shoot it. Okay, we've long established I'm terrible, but why is this stupid thing humiliating me this badly? Ah, got him. Jake bargains with Sherry over the price of his blood. Jake is a greedy opportunist, just like his dad when he was young. Nostalgic. And enter Ustanok. You'll be seeing a lot of him shortly. This first boss fight is actually pretty fun. It's intuitive, you have multiple options, and there's a lot of movement involved. It's probably the most fun boss in the game, honestly. Sadly, immediately afterwards, the game hooks up with Chris's section, and now we have to fight the damn giants all over again. You may remember what a huge fan of that I was. At least here, you just need to distract the giant while Chris does all the work. You know the encounter this time too, so it does go more smoothly. Afterwards, we evacuate in a chopper and Jake gets sassy.
Jarheads all look the same to me, pal, sorry.
Says the guy with a shaved head wearing a military uniform. Thankfully, after a stalker and 2 giants, we can finally rest from all those boss fights. Never mind, now we have to jump between planes and gun down the Ustanok and an entire fleet of enemy helicopters. The good news is, those enemy helicopters are terrible. They pretty much sit there waiting to be destroyed. Ustanok doesn't. Time to leave the plane, and end Jake Chapter 1. Honestly, this was a pretty fun one. I even got my first S rank. Unfortunately, the game now falls out of a plane, both literally and figuratively. Chapter 2 is cool on paper. Unfortunately, the paper gets put through a shredder. You're trapped in a snowstorm looking for items. There's terrible visibility, flying items everywhere, it's just a mess. You're better off just ignoring everything and running to the next icon on the screen. There's more to complain about, but I found a snowmobile, so now we're playing with that. So long, Sherry. Once you find the 3 MacGuffins, you take refuge in a cabin and get to know each other. Oh yeah, I skipped over this part. Sherry has some healing ability, it's not that important. Sherry, I hate to break it to you, but neither of them ever mention you. Your party soon gets crashed, and the resulting brawl is crazy enough that it's probably time to leave. I swear, I find ways to die in these cinematic scenes even on parts that don't require input. I swear, I find ways to die in these cinematic scenes even on parts that don't require input. Part 2, The Revenge. When the snowmobile crashes, like every other vehicle in the game, we find ourselves in an old mine. Unfortunately, not alone. Our job here is to hide from him, and this stealth section isn't too bad. He sends out these creatures as sort of sensors who alert him if they see you. You can even stealth kill them. Neato. It's really your own fault if you get detected, and if you do, you can always hide from the stalker in a trash bin. It's not too bad, but I'd still rather have a Haunting Grounds successor, Capcom. Unfortunately, avoiding him only brings us so far. He's near a key that we need to make our way out. Grab a snack, we're going to be here a while. Okay, here we go. There were remote mines around the area. Not really sure what I'm going to do, but... Oh, he's coming at me. No problem, we fought him before. Except now he kills us in a cutscene if he gets close. He didn't do that last time. Fine, let's dance. I'll plant the remote bomb, have him bumble into it, and then grab the card. Oh, did I mistime the detonation? I must have. Let's try again. Next, I learned the hard way that you don't auto-equip another remote bomb after detonating one. Alright, I'm learning. Let him be mad, just don't have him be mad at me. Oh, he kills Sherry in a cutscene too. Why were you just standing there, Sherry? Okay, this time I definitely nailed him. And he walks by me to kill Sherry again. Well, that's nice of him. I'm starting to think he can't be stunned. I relent and do the obvious thing. Instead of charging onto the breaking ice like a moron, I use the remote bomb to lure him away. And it works! And we're on top of the key, mission accomplished. And I can't pick it up? And Sherry dies anyway. Okay, why couldn't I pick up the key? Was it a glitch? It tells me to get the key. It was right there. Try again. I bait the Ustanok, get to the key, and I can't pick up the key and Sherry dies as she refuses to move from that spot. Same result. What? Aha, you have to send Sherry up this ladder, and then you distract the Ustanok, and then Sherry picks up the key and gets impaled immediately. I'm starting to feel demoralized just narrating this. This time, I'm bombing repeatedly, I'm firing gunshots, I'm distracting the hell out of Ustanok. He's gonna call the cops on me, I'm so loud. And this time he impales Sherry before she even reaches the key. Did I ever tell you what the definition of the word insanity is? It's doing the same damn thing over and over and expecting it to work this time, which it does for some reason. Awesome. Almost. Thank God I got this on my next try, and we're done with annoying Ustanok encounters for this chapter. Just after this part. The hallway of QTE valve turning. Okay, how am I this bad I can pass the QTE and still die? Okay, this time I even made it through the door and still died. And why do I need to press circle after finishing the QTE anyway? Can I not just automatically go through after the QTE, please? Finally, we're done. My spirit is dead, and we get to drill the Ustanok into the wall in what's supposed to be cathartic. I see how it is, game. I can pass other QTEs and die, yet I can fail all these QTEs and live. Again, this is supposed to be cathartic, but it goes on. For so long. When did this turn into Mario Party? Have I not spun the stick enough times? Have I not repented for my sins? Am I not deserving of forgiveness? Finally, Jake learns he's a Wesker, and we get kidnapped by Ada. Joy. But don't worry, it wouldn't be a video game if you didn't escape in the following cutscene. Apparently Jake waited 6 months to do this, so I guess he was comfortable. We're unarmed, so naturally there's a good bit of fisticuffs here. The first area is completely white. Ada really wanted a white kitchen, but seems to have gone overboard. There are other colors besides white, you know. To escape the white area, we need to solve some tiny puzzles. You escort Sherry via a gun camera, and luckily the enemies never think to react in any way to the gun shooting them. You also solve a box puzzle, which is terrible for multiple reasons, but we really need to get moving. Jake and Sherry meet up, and boy do they. We get our gear back and Jake yells at his dad. We then find out where all the color went. We need 10 ID medallions to escape this place. This part is fun and a bit open-ended, as there are 16 medallions, but you only need 10. There are definitely parts filled with way too many waves of enemies, but there's a light bit of puzzle solving and exploration elements to gathering the ID medallions, so it's a lot more fun than turning valves and getting impaled. So, once we gather all 10 ID medallions, we open the front door. What do you think is behind that front door? Take a moment to think. Remember, this is a flagship title of a prestige horror franchise. A tank. It's a tank. A tank bursts into the room, and then runs me over. I swear, I die at every single on-rails section and never have any idea why. We escape the tank by moving the statue around until the bars are aligned enough for Jake to jump across. I don't really understand what that was, but it's over. We grab a motorcycle and play chicken with the tank's cannon. And end Chapter 3 with a daring escape. Chapter 4 picks up right there with a cinematic motorcycle chase through not Hong Kong. The choreography is more exciting than Chris's car ride, but it really isn't fun to play. Chapter 4 is like a greatest hits compilation, so I'm gonna speed right through it. The motorcycle crashes like every vehicle in this game, and we're plagued by yet another goddamn chopper, who takes pot shots at us while we fight off some enemies. Yup, this is the other side of Chris's chopper section. Once the game tells us we can, we need to blow it up, too. It's not as rough as with Chris, though. The thrills never stop, and soon you're faced with a Chinese chainsaw massacre. You noticed he definitely isn't dead, right? That's because he ambushes us again, and again, and again, and again. Thankfully, Batman comes and saves us. In between Chainsaw Man encounters number 16 and 24, we run into Leon. And if you remember Leon's campaign, you know Ustanok isn't far behind. This 4-on-1 fight is basically just blammo, blammo, blammo. After a nice quiet boat ride, we meet up with Leon again, who found Simmons. Man, I did not miss this guy. Simmons was the guy who sent Sherry to get Jake's blood. Sherry, of course, not knowing that. Well, see Leon's campaign for details. Sadly, despite beating down an armored chopper and Ustanok and the same Chainsaw Man 6 times just in the current chapter, Jake and Sherry get captured really easily. And into the final chapter we go. Again, it wouldn't be a video game if we didn't escape in the next cutscene, so don't worry about being captured. But this time, we need to use our brains. You have to run blindly around the cell repeatedly. After reaching the requisite number of laps, the partner button will appear and fade in and out of existence. Once you grab your gear, some old invincible friends will show up, and you know the drill. Gather some items, and this big central elevator thing will get you where you need to be. Since you know the drill, we'll skip to the cool part.
Jump!
Past this is another familiar scene. Here's where we shoot Chris.
Go ahead. Shoot.
Chris and Piers stay behind to stop the apocalypse, but Jake seems to think he's too important for that, so off they go to escape. You stumble into a volcano. Not literally, but I'm using dramatic license, so it's a volcano. Only one problem: our old nemesis, our old Ustanok, appears through the magma, blocking your escape. The only way out is through. The first part of this final battle will take you across narrow catwalks, dangling above a bed of lava. You beat a quick retreat to get some space between you, but he follows. Before long, you give him what he came for, and the catwalks are destroyed, dropping you into the true arena. He's tough. This part is a real brawl. He makes more holes full of volcano. He'll do whatever it takes to take you down, and you'll return the favor. You see an opening. Sherry chokes him, and you rip off his arm. In the process, your guns both go flying off out of reach, and you're stuck on a catwalk with nowhere to go and no weapons left to use. Only one thing to do. Time to settle this mano a mano. You beat him to the ledge, and he's finally stunned, ready for the coup de grace. We give him a punch for every time he insta-killed us, and another punch for every valve we had to turn.
Take that! You like that?
And bam, right into the lava he goes. Time for us to go too. Thankfully, I already said that was the final boss, so this elevator ride should go smoothly.
Well, what are we waiting for?
And one last partner action to end them all.
Saved me. You know that, don't you? Thank you.
And so, Jake's story ends. A post-credits scene reveals that Jake gave his blood away for free and wears sunglasses now, like that other guy. So, now that it's over, let's talk about Jake's campaign. If you felt like this campaign flew by, you're not alone. I finished it in about 3.5 hours, which isn't a bad thing. Even with the bits I hated, the chapters were over fast, and there's a lot in there that was genuinely fun, including the ending punch-out sequence with Ustanak and that cinematic finish on the elevator. But it does feel like it's distinctly missing something, and somehow it feels even less like Resident Evil than Chris's campaign does. And despite being the new guy and Wesker's kid, Jake ultimately doesn't really contribute anything to the plot. Leon kills Simmons, Ada will kill the other main villain, we'll get to that, Chris stops the apocalypse plot, Jake just leaves. As controversial a character as he is, Jake is actually kind of fun when the plot isn't telling him to do stupid things, and I liked this older version of Sherry, too. The relationship isn't all that fleshed out, but they do have character arcs and some chemistry, and it's fun to see it culminate in the ending, which includes the final partner action in the entire game, since this is the third campaign and Ada has no partner. They tried some different things in this campaign, like the Blizzard chapter, Jake's acrobatics, the hand-to-hand, an emphasis on running from scenarios where you're outgunned, and the Ustanak as a stalker, but ultimately none of it really amounted to all that much, especially with how short his campaign was. Ustanak is a highlight, but doesn't feel like a true stalker since all his bits are intensely scripted. Still, it was a fun enough ride, and it all definitely ended on a high note. And that brings us to the last of the campaigns, and it's the one I have the least to say about. It's the Ada campaign. If you haven't noticed yet, we've quite obviously been chasing around two different Adas this whole game without really knowing what either of them are about. Ada's campaign is supposed to fill in the blanks and give us the rest of the story. Other than that, it focuses on puzzles, sort of. There's a couple stealth sections too. That's kind of it. So, let's see how this works out, very briefly. Chapter 1 is set in a sub. Simmons has summoned, say that 3 times fast, her to this sub via the Tesseract, without really giving a reason. The sub is full of narrow corridors. Stealth segments. I mean, there's supposed to be stealth segments. Chapter 1 is mostly running past things. There's a puzzle in there somewhere. We take a break and watch some TV. The TV show is Simmons' self-published pilot, where he tells Ada to abduct Jake for his antibodies. However, Ada doesn't remember filming the pilot. Then she goes swimming. Also, there's a lot of bees. Naturally, the sub explodes and you must evacuate. Naturally, there's a QTE. Your escape plan fails, and you have to do more busy work. It culminates in a question and answer game while you get attacked by bees. Ada talks to the Rubik's Cube, who reveals the upcoming bioterror events in the US and China, and that he's going to frame Ada for it. Another explosion for the road, and Chapter 1, fin. Chapter 2 finds us in Tall Oaks and marks the return of the zombies. Man, it's been a while since we fought these guys. In this chapter, you solve a series of increasingly elaborate puzzles all dependent on zombies being in set places like pieces of furniture to collect several fragments of a family crest that lead to the catacombs of an Illuminati organization underneath a lab underneath a cathedral. Just another day in Resident Evil. Remember Deborah? Time to repeat this entire fight verbatim. Every single phase. You start from a sniping position, but you'll be warped to the main arena shortly, so don't worry about the fight being in any way unique. There's a little more drama in the labs afterwards. Expect to fight off some of the big boy enemies. Finally, we stumble on the same video of Ada hatching from an egg that we saw in Leon's campaign so many hours ago. Ada gets a call on the Allspark, and figures out that she isn't talking to Simmons, but to her own BOW clone. She calls the real Simmons on the Borg cube and tells him the clone wants to destroy the world. End Chapter 2. Chapter 3 has you fighting the chainsaw guy another 6 times and sniping to cover Jake. That's it. That's the whole chapter. She never interacts with Jake and Sherry outside of this either. This is a great example of how the campaigns don't really tie together organically, they're just kind of forced to cross over. Chapter 4 takes us to the ship where Chris confronted the fake Ada, and it has a bit more on the agenda. First, collect 3 keys while the invincible foes stalk you. Old hat. Afterwards, we have, well, a revelation, and this is where the plot really goes downhill. Simmons took a researcher named Carla who had a crush on him, and had her genetically alter herself into a bioweapon that looks exactly like Ada, because Ada wouldn't date him. The National Security Advisor abducted Deborah, assassinated the president, destroyed a city with zombies, and created a bioweapon who went rogue and tried to trigger the apocalypse, and his underlying motivation is that he's as obsessed with Ada as Reddit is. That's sincerely the plot of RE6. Before you can digest this, we're lured outside to see Carla, who's just been shot by a guy in the helicopter, if you remember that from Chris's story. If you were wondering what the deal with that was, the family the Illuminati group Simmons was a part of turned on him after he was infected by the C virus, and went to stop Carla as well. So that guy who shot the main villain was some guy related to that other guy from that group that we never see that's never mentioned again. This game is not great at explaining its plot, but that doesn't stop Ada from trying.
Your hatred for Simmons drove you to tear down the world they created. But it was your conscience, Carla, that saw you fail. After all, isn't that why you brought me into this?
Just to recap, Simmons created a bioweapon monster clone of Ada because he was mad Ada rejected him, and said bioweapon monster clone hates both Simmons and Ada because he rejected her in favor of her, and now is going to destroy the entire world as revenge. Just wanted to make sure you got all that. This part is pretty cool though. The transformed Carla completely consumes the ship. It starts with her taunting you and blocking the doors. Her hands reach out from the walls to grab you. And then a humanoid version of her emerges from the goop that's taken over the ship. She surrounds you and can jump up from anywhere while you're trying to escape. And then, that happens. The goop starts to form her face on the walls, culminating in this freaky thing. You have to blow a hole in it with explosive arrows in order to shoot the nitrogen canisters behind it. And we made it out. Time to go and finish the job by finishing off Simmons. Cue Chapter 5. Here we go. The final chapter of Resident Evil 6. We've come so very far to get here. And what does the game have left for us to finish things off? Well, a helicopter rail segment, Simmons boss fights. The exact same Simmons boss fights as with Leon. Simmons narrates some of his text messages, and you go through the same song and dance. On the plus side, this scene with Leon swapping through his weapons looks really funny. And that's the final boss. What a letdown. Not only is it a repeat, it's not even the final form of the guy. And then we just abruptly cut to Ada in this lab where she kills something and shoots up the place. I'm assuming that was another Carla growing, but there's no context to this final scene, so who knows? Once she's done, Ada moves on to her next job, and that's Resident Evil 6. Or, hang on, there's one last scene. Jake fighting some hunters. This is never followed up on, and Jake never appears again. What a note to end on. And that's Resident Evil 6. Boy, what an anticlimax. The game doesn't end so much as it just sort of stops. Both Chris's and Jake's campaigns had great finales, and that was honestly a huge saving grace for them. But when we clear Ada's, the one that's supposed to explain and tie everything together, it just leaves you hollow. Remember the driving force of Chris's campaign being to kill Ada? He actually never even learns that there were two Adas. Leon never really figures out what the hell was going on either. And you'd think this storyline would be deeply personal for Ada, but she doesn't really care. She's completely unfazed by every twist, kills the clone and just moves along like it's another Tuesday. This indifferent attitude was fine in the campy RE4, but it's a big problem with the same character in a serious story. She's unaffected by everything, which makes her both kind of boring and makes everything going on feel unimportant. This storyline seems tailor-built to be the one that really affects her, but it still doesn't. From a gameplay perspective, her campaign is loaded with recycled junk and filler. The finale campaign that ties them all together instead feels more like pre-order bonus DLC. And that's where we end the campaigns. If you've actually gone through this entire journey with me, congratulations for making it this far. But there's still a couple things left. RE6 is loaded with online modes. The coolest one is called Agent Hunt, where you go take control of a regular enemy in someone's game. This can either be kind of fun or go very badly. Anytime now, any day we'll catch those meddling teenagers. Still, if you get a better enemy like the dog or the stronger zombie, you can actually move and get some kills in. It's a lot better in theory than execution, but it's still pretty cool that it's there. Other online modes I have no opinion on, because I couldn't actually play them as there were no games to find. So that's that. There's also, as is tradition, Mercenaries mode. And I gotta say, this Mercenaries mode is really fun. RE6 is freed of the shackles of its poorly designed campaigns here, and you can play with its mechanics freely. It's loaded with characters, stages, and just plain fun. Most people that defend RE6 really love Mercenaries. There's not really too much more to say about Mercenaries other than, well, it's fun. It might seem cruel that I've spent an immensely long time tearing the rest of the game apart practically screen by screen, yet I gloss over the best part of it in mere sentences. But life isn't fair. And the final item here is the Story Museum. There are cute little dioramas here for each campaign, and you can unlock files with story information. Some of these files contain information that's kind of important and not really explained properly in-game, like these bits that explain Jake's daddy issues and the reason for his trust problems, or some just outright explaining the plot. And that about rounds up the main menu. There's nothing left. At long last, we've now explored everything that RE6 has to offer. I suppose it's time to sum up. What was that game? What did we learn? Well, let's put it this way. Co-op, online modes galore. Capcom stated openly survival horror's market was too small, and they wanted to revolve around action. Newcomer Jake was specifically designed to appeal to younger players. RE6 was made to appeal to as many people as possible, and that included existing Resident Evil fans whom they tried to cater to with Leon's campaign, which itself felt inspired by Left 4 Dead. It would be easy to dismiss this game as a cynical project that was the result of pure corporate greed. And there's some truth to that. But it isn't completely true either, because the ambition and inspiration of the developers still shines through. The game is stuffed with content and production values, full of experimental ideas that just keep coming. Ideas that even sometimes contradict the cynical view of it. The control scheme is deep and nothing like its peers, and even as overbearingly loaded with explosions and gunfire as it is, you still frequently have barely any ammo, which is a big departure from shooters of the era and harkens back to the series' roots. The story is a disaster as a whole, but in places actually works well and explores bold new ideas and themes that a game like RE5 wouldn't dream of trying. Given all that, I'd love to tell you that RE6 is just misunderstood. That if you go in not expecting traditional RE, that once you get the hang of it, it's a phenomenal game. I'd love to tell you that, but I can't. Certainly, that will go a long way in helping you enjoy it, but it remains a mess of a game in countless ways. And that's RE6 in a nutshell, a mixed bag. With that said, I guess we've come back to the beginning and ended where we started. It's polarizing. I guess we could have just skipped all of this and left it at that. But it's all about the journey, right? Right? Yeah. After RE6, Capcom saw the warning bells, and they changed direction for the series. In truth, the real strength of Resident Evil was this. It's the ability to reinvent itself time and again whenever it seems like we're stretching the limits. With RE4, again with RE7, and again with the modern remakes. Every time the series pivots, we also see a slew of other games inspired by Resident Evil. So maybe the series needed a catalyst for that change. Maybe it's okay to be Resident Evil 6, after all.